I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, "Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks."
The next 2 weeks. Look, for a reasonable person, a thinking person, a serious person, which is not the person Karoline Leavitt's talking about right there. If that was a serious president, then taking a couple of weeks to pursue diplomatic options would be a good thing. And that is what Donald Trump, after all, wanted when he told the Israelis not to bomb Iran, and they told him to kick rocks and did it anyway. And then he had to pretend that he was interested in this all along. So if he was serious, that would all be fine. The issue is that Donald Trump says everything is coming in 2 weeks. Flying cars are coming in 2 weeks. The reboot of Spaceballs in theaters in 2 weeks. And everybody has noticed this pattern. I think the best breakdown of it, though, came on CNN last night from Caitlin Collins.
But if that 2-week timeline that you heard there sounds familiar, that's because it is. Since his first time in office, President Trump has often relied on a 2-week metric.
You trust President Putin, in about 2 weeks.
In your mind, is Ukraine doing enough to get this peace?
I'd rather tell you in about 2 weeks from now.
Do you still believe that Putin actually wants to end the war?
I can't tell you that, but I'll let you know in about 2 weeks.
President Trump has actually put forth a 2-week timeline so frequently that it's tough to fit many of the instances on the screen all at the same time. And of course, when you look at this and how many times this has been the answer when pressed by a reporter for what his time frame is for something, listen to the president in his own words.
I think you're going to find some very interesting items coming to the forefront over the next 2 weeks.
We've got the plan largely completed, and we'll be filing it over the next 2 or 3 weeks.
We're going to be having a news conference in about 2 weeks. I will make that decision, I would say, over the next 2 weeks.
And I'll be making a big decision on the Paris Accord over the next 2 weeks.
At some point in the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I'm going to be setting the deal.
Over the next 2-3 weeks. In about 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks. In 2 weeks.
You'll be hearing about it a lot more in the next 2 weeks. Maybe in 100 years from now, maybe in 2 weeks.
Just in case you thought he was ever serious about that. Yeah, I'm still waiting for his healthcare plan coming within 2 weeks. So look, this is not complicated. Why does he say 2 weeks? Because it's long enough that other news will have pushed whatever the question was out of the news cycle. That's it. And Donald Trump is not a particularly smart man, but he is savvy enough to realize that in 2 weeks, we won't be talking about insert a thing. That's it. He doesn't have an answer. He's not actually decisive and bold and quick-witted and honest and upfront. Whatever attributes MAGA pretends to think he has, he doesn't have those. What he has is an evasion. 2 weeks. I'll get back to you in 2 weeks. And we could go through all these different examples. There was a 2-week deadline for Vladimir Putin to prove that he actually wants peace against Ukraine on May 28th. It came and went, nothing happened. He didn't talk about it. 2 weeks, April 24th, 2-week line about a question of aid to Ukraine. He said, no, let you know in 2 weeks. He didn't. May 19th, he was asked whether Ukraine had done enough to foster negotiations. He said, I'd rather tell you in 2 weeks. Like all of these things just go by. It doesn't mean anything. And I know, Brett, you've already made the point on this show that he's not a serious person. I hate that they get to pretend that he is in White House press briefings. What do you think?
I've found the person who is behind much of the messaging in the White House, and you guys will be familiar if you've seen Total Recall, but there's this one scene where they're on their way to Mars and they're like, do you bring any food and vegetables with you? And the answer is 2 weeks. How long are you staying? 2 weeks, and then repeats it, and then the head explodes, which is a harbinger for things to come as we launch headlong into nuclear war. So this is the thing. This is the wedge issue that is, even if you'll hear it from people like I don't know if it's Charlie Kirk, but definitely like Tucker Carlson and various other people, Dave Smith, who came on TYT the other day. This is the thing that's going to blow up Donald Trump's coalition. Specifically the fact that he sounds like this. He's very bad when negotiating over whether we're going to go to war. Does he have a specific plan for this? No, it's the same 2 weeks and I'll get back to you. Hopefully you'll forget about it by then. Plan that he had for healthcare, which we still don't have. which he had for everything, which we still don't have. That's just his way of kicking the can down the road. It's actually in a time when everybody's talking about how, they don't like woke. What they really love is a snooze button.
Yeah.
They love a 2-week snooze button, hoping that they're just gonna miss the deadline and it'll go by. But like in this scenario, when Donald Trump says like this very obviously ridiculous stuff that sadly is part of his process. He's supposed to be this amazing negotiator. He's supposed to be a strong, amazing anti-war negotiator who also wants to turn Gaza into a strip mall. But like that outlier, they've been able to kind of put out of their head for a while and say that Trump is a strong negotiator who is anti-war. But it seems like he is not strong because he's being pushed into a war by someone else, or he's a bad, weak negotiator because he can't get Iran and Bibi to sign the same deal, and he's just not anti-war because the guy is leading us into war. His people have explicitly said that war is still on the table. Not just that, not just bunker busters, but potential nuclear war, explicitly said by his own spokespeople. But that weird game of misdirection to get you to believe that he's all three of these things at once, it's not what they said when they were trying to compare him to like Nixon and say like the thing about Trump, he's such a good negotiator because you never know what you're gonna get. Like at this point, we've heard it for 9 years.
Yeah.
He's never been able to pull it off. And when you start to really peel back the layers of one of his arguments, all three of those qualities he purports to have, they don't hold water at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and also like there's theoretically some value in the other side not knowing exactly what you're gonna do, but like in theory, you should know. You should not be making it up and surprising yourself every single day, which is unfortunately what he has done. But anyway, really fast before we close things out, apparently Hegseth is not really involved in this, according to reporting, which seems strange. I mean, objectively, it seems like a great idea. He's not qualified to be in charge of any war, but he is the Secretary of Defense and they're not talking to him. Now, maybe they're just not talking to him because they don't want the details to be leaked on Signal. I don't know, but it's weird that now Gabbard is out because she warned against nuclear war. And since Trump is open to nuking these sites, maybe Gabbard was on to something. And Hegseth is out, even though that dude has been horny for war with Iran for years and years. So he's out. And we're all waiting to find out what's gonna happen. Now, apparently US spy agencies in the last day have confirmed what Gabbard said and might lose her job over. They're not actively building a bomb. That's not a thing that they're actually doing. They, in theory, could, which has been true for decades, but they're not, okay? That means that Netanyahu was lying or has utterly incompetent intelligence. And based on Israeli intelligence's ability that was demonstrated in the first days of their attack on Iran, I don't believe they have utterly incompetent intelligence. The only plausible explanation is that he is actively lying, which he appears to have been doing for about as long as Brett and I have been alive. And so just bear all that in mind. And one other thing, never forget, Brett used to want to do a segment called All Americans Agree. Remember that?
Most Americans agree.
Most Americans agree. Well, yeah, most Americans agree we should not be involved in this war. 60% say the US military should not get involved, which really undersells how unpopular it would be. Only 16% support US military action. 16% is as low as you will get for anything that you poll the American people on, because some people like to troll. And so just bear all that in mind as we wait for the 2 weeks. And I really like Trump's snooze button as an idea for the 2-week thing. Let's keep that going, Brett.